Good evening, friends. Myself, Dr. Nidhi Darbari, on My Education Treasure. In my previous video on reinforcement skill, I had discussed about the meaning and components of reinforcement skill of micro teaching. Today, in my present video, I am going to discuss about the basic terms and schedule of reinforcement skill of micro teaching. Basic terms of reinforcement. Punishment reinforcement. Punishment reinforcement refers to adding something aversive in order to decrease a behavior. For example, disciplining the student, labor work, kneeling, etc. for breaking the rules. Punishment can be equalized by positive reinforcement from alternative sources. Comparison of negative reinforcement and punishment. For example, negative reinforcement is if you do your homework as required, you will have long break to play. Punishment reinforcement is because you did not do your homework as required, you will have to stay inside the class today during long and short break. Extension reinforcement. When the teacher removes something in order to decrease a behavior, it is called extinction. That is, he is taking something away so that a response is decreased. For example, if a student no longer receives praise and admiration for his good work, he may feel that his behavior is generating no fruitful consequence. Extinction may unintentionally lower desirable behavior. Vicarious reinforcement. This relates to learning through what happens to others. In the classroom, if a student's action is reinforced, others tend to act in the same way. Usually effective because the desired behavior had already been modeled and consequently need not be taught. If Sita is praised for a certain action and Kirti desires the same teacher's praise, so she acts the same way to satisfy the teacher. Qualified reinforcement. In this approach, students' actions are not only partially acceptable and the teacher may want to reinforce the student in a way that will motivate him for continued attempt at the desired action. For example, if Jyoti gets a problem wrong on the board, the teacher could reinforce her that the procedure is correct and reinforce his good efforts. Types of reinforcers. Direct reinforcement results directly from the appropriate behavior. For example, interacting appropriately with peers in group activities will lead to some invitations to join such activities. The natural reinforcement for appropriate bids for attention, help, participation, etc. is providing the attention, help, and opportunity to participate. The goal should always be to move the students to natural and intrinsic reinforcement. Expressions like nodding head, smiling, clapping, or a pat on the back. Written ones are super right, excellent, keep it up, etc. Verbals are good job, well done, I can tell you are working really hard, you are nice, etc. Social reinforcers. Social reinforcers are socially mediated by teachers, parents, and peers which express approval for appropriate behavior. Being given responsibility to lead a team, participate in choosing a student with whom to participate in activities. It is 90% more effective than concrete ones. Activity reinforcers. Activity reinforcers are very effective and positive for students because it appeals to their interest. For example, allowing students to participate in preferred activities such as games, computers, etc. This also provides social reinforcement. Tangible reinforcers. Reinforcers are tangible things like edibles, toys, balloons, stickers, and awards. Edibles and toys should be used with caution. Parents may have reason to object to edibles as reinforcement for students with weight problem. Toys and others can make other students envious. Certificates displaying work and letters to parents commenting the students' progress, sponsorship, etc. Token reinforcers. Token reinforcement involves awarding points or tokens for appropriate behavior. These rewards have little value in themselves but can be exchanged for something of value. Reinforcement schedule, time and frequency of reinforcement. Students are likely to repeat an action if they are reinforced immediately. It can be in continuous or intermittent forms. Schedule of reinforcement. A schedule of reinforcement is a rule stating the basis on which reinforcement will be delivered. It can be categorized into two: using time as a factor and using response as a factor. Using time as a factor. In using time as a factor, reinforcement is determined by time period between the response. The time as a factor could be fixed or varied. The schedules of reinforcement are either regular or continuous and intermittent. Regular or continuous schedule. In continuous schedule, reinforcement is provided to the organism regularly after all the correct responses. Reinforcement is delivered for a behavior after a fixed length of time. It can be such as every 30 seconds, that is, after 30, 60, 90, and 120 seconds. Some examples are getting results after examination. The teacher gives cookies to each time the child spells his name correctly. Intermittent or variable schedule. In intermittent schedule, sometimes reinforcement is given to the organism and sometimes not, even after correct response. That is, reinforce often but not following every occurrence of desirable behavior. Reinforcers is given to at no particular time, that is, the first reinforcement at 30 seconds followed by another at 10 seconds interval and then 40-second intervals, then at 5 seconds, etc. Using response as a factor. In using response as a factor, reinforcement is determined by number of responses. Using response as a factor schedules can be classified as interval schedule and ratio schedule. Interval schedule. In interval schedule, reinforcement is given after a gap of some hours, some days, some months or years. For example, a worker will get rupees 500 as his wage after 8 hours. Interval schedule are further classified as fixed interval schedule and variable interval schedule. Fixed interval schedule. In fixed interval schedule, reinforcement is given to the organism after a prescribed interval of time, irrespective of his performance. For example, government servants draw salaries at the end of every month, whether they perform poorly or nicely, passing final exam and promotion to the next class. The demerit of this schedule is that the organism develops time discrimination, that is, he knows that he will get the salary at the fixed time, and hence no response is elicited even after reinforcement. The second problem is that if interval between the reinforcement is too long, it is very difficult to maintain behavior, resulting in no improvement in the behavior. Variable interval schedule. In variable interval schedule reinforcement, the reinforcement is randomly spread over for a particular period of time. That is, sometimes it is given after say 2 minutes and sometimes after 3 or 4 minutes. Steadiness of rate is the important characteristic of this schedule. In the teaching learning process, if the teacher has to give 15 reinforcement in 1 hour, he will not reinforce the child after every 4 minutes. The teacher may reinforce the child 5 times in the first 15 minutes, 5 times in the next 40 minutes, and in the last 5 minutes he is reinforced 5 times at every minute. Ratio schedule. In ratio schedule, reinforcement is given to the organism on the basis of his performance, no matter after how long he gets. For example, payment is given to a watch repairing person when he repairs the watch correctly, no matter how much time he takes in repairing. Ratio schedule are further classified as fixed ratio schedule and variable ratio schedule. Fixed ratio schedule. In fixed ratio schedule, reinforcement, an organism is reinforced only after emitting a fixed number of responses. For example, if he is reinforced once after 5 correct responses, schedule will be 5:1, or a child is given 1 chocolate after solving 5 questions of maths, reinforcing the student after every 10 to 20 minutes spent on a task, praising a student after every third question answered. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, I request you all to please give a like to my video to motivate me, share it with others, and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. Variable ratio schedule. In variable ratio schedule reinforcement, the number of responses required for reinforcement varies around some average ratio. Reinforcement is given to the organism is random, sometimes given after 2 correct responses and sometimes after 3 or 4 correct responses, but the total number of reinforcement that he is to be given will not change. The organism does not know at how many responses he will get reinforcement. The variable is not predictable. Announcement of bonus for employees by the companies on different occasions is an example of variable ratio schedule. It results in steady rate of responding without break, that is better performance all the time. Gambling is the best example of variable ratio schedule. Praising a student, but the amount of time and the student is not fixed. Every time after a question is answered but not fixed number. Thus at the fifth correct response, reinforcement is given, followed at the 12th correct and again at the 15th correct response, reinforcement is given, etc. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video and don't forget to subscribe.